According to Steam, I've already clocked 40 hours into this game, and I think that number is probably accurate because, man, I cannot stop playing this game, and neither can anyone else, evidently. I did a Sneck fails in this game, and it blew up right after, so I guess you could say I did play it before it was cool. And I'm a trendsetter now, I guess? Nah, not really. But I can't help but play it. This game is pure joy, like it was custom tailored just for me. But what makes it tick? When you strip back the Castlevania references, what's really at the core of this game? Let's find out together. Join me for a closer look at indie breakout sensation Vampire Survivors. Greetings everyone, this is the Hipster Snack, and today we're going to be looking into a roguelite that is rapidly establishing itself as not only one of my favorite games, but a favorite of many, many more beyond that. Released originally in early access form December of 2021 on Steam, the game maintains a simple story and mechanics, which may very well be the entire reason why it's so easy to pick up and engage with. And before I go even one sentence further into this review, I want to stress that the game is in early access form as I have put this script and video together. This means that anything and potentially everything I'm saying in this review needs to have the asterisk next to it with the footnote saying as of the time of this writing. So if something I say here ultimately makes no sense or isn't true anymore in the future tense, I apologize for the confusion in advance. But everything in this review is true and up to date as of the 0.4.2 patch released April 5th, 2022. Anyway, the story insofar as there is one involves one Antonio Belpasse, and yes, I probably said that wrong, I just have to live with this now, as he is your sole starting character when you first start up the game. He is, if flavor text is indeed canon, on the hunt for the king of vampires. However, he also seems to not really know where said vampire is, as you don't actually encounter true vampires in this game. Anyway, armed with the whip and the ability to use logistically improbable numbers of weapons and tools at the same time, you get plunked into an open field to figure it out. Yeah, storytelling is somewhat, shall we say, minimalist in this game, but that's okay, we'll cover more about that later. For starters, the game looks good, and it's only gotten better with time. The sprites are large and colorful, each popping up against the backdrops, which are detailed in their own right if a bit washed out. A recent graphical overhaul has helped too, as now the clover and spinach items, which used to look a lot alike, now are much easier to tell apart. And the characters, while simple and only maintaining a looping walking cycle for each are distinct in their own rights, with obvious inspiration stemming from many different sources, with Antonio and the likes of Imelda, Arca, and Llama taking conventions from Castlevania, or Pugnala being an obvious homage to Bayonetta, and there's also literally a giant panda character. I'm not even joking on that one. To say the game doesn't feel the need to take itself super seriously is a bit of an understatement, and frankly to the game's overall credit. At present, the game maintains 4 main maps, a bonus area, and the challenge map, with the first 4 having unique tile sets and themes to call their own, and the latter 2 sharing assets from the first 4. This works well, especially as while the way enemies spawn remains fairly consistent across them all, some maps, like the library or the tower, have unique landscapes that force the player to traverse only in limited directions, as opposed to the first level, which is an open field and thus can be traveled indefinitely in all 8 directions. It shows a lot of thought went into the overall level designs in addition to the unique obstacles that each map has. Near as I can tell, the levels will repeat endlessly, so I don't believe the levels are procedural, but a recent map item upgrade also shows that your position relative to the start remains tracked at all times, but now we're getting a bit too technical, so let's just move on. The music in this game is also exceptional. The base stage themes have a gothic, haunting feeling to them, which becomes super tense action piece when you engage the hyper mode, more on that in a little bit. And now certain characters and even one particular weapon have their own unique themes which will override base stage music. A lot of thought went into the overall scores and their implementation, and it shows in some really creative ways. A lot of praise also belongs to the sound effects, especially since you'll be hearing them a lot. It shows that a lot of care was put into making each of them, since the repetitious nature of the weapons actually doesn't seem to cause most players of the game any grief. In many cases, I find that they blend nicely into the background, as they should, given that, again, you'll be hearing them an awful lot. The entire audio experience is handled extremely well, so it definitely gets my seal of approval. And where the game really shines is in its gameplay. It's extremely easy to pick up and just play the game, as it really only involves use of either the control pad or control stick, for the most part. Generally, you'll just be piloting your character around the game map. All weapons and tools function automatically without any need of input. At first, this seemed a little strange to me, as starting off with Antonio and his whip, I thought I would need to tap buttons in order to fire the weapon up. However, I soon realized it was whipping of its own accord, which creates an interesting distinction between weapons, some of them attacking rapidly and others having a much larger wind-up to their execution, like the pentagram, which has the biggest cooldown period of any other weapon in the entire game. So you set to work with whatever your character's first weapon is and begin dispatching a limitless legion of enemies. As you do so, you'll collect various gems, mostly blue, green, and red, and increasing rarity and value, which will cause your character to level up. Upon doing so, the action pauses for a brief moment as you're prompted to pick between 3 or 4 options. These can be new weapons, passive tools, or leveling up a weapon or tool that you already have on hand. You can carry up to 6 weapons at a time, and you can collect up to 6 tools from leveling up. I phrase it that way on purpose because a recent update has made it such that some maps have tools already on them that you can collect, even allowing you to carry more than the regular 6 on hand at a time. But I caution you, dear players, to consider that the more things that you have, the more time you're going to spend leveling it up to its maximum value. So pace yourselves appropriately, or else you'll end up with 6 level 1 weapons and a lot of monsters already having HP that easily soaks all the damage you're putting out. Speaking of, sometimes stronger monsters will spawn in at certain timed intervals. Usually they'll either be a unique or extra large sprite or have some kind of glowing aura about them, but they'll command your attention one way or another. Anyway, upon defeating these kinds of monsters, there's some chance that they'll drop a chest, which can contain 1, 3, or 5 power-ups within, and extremely catchy bonus music at that. These chests can not only level up weapons and tools in your possession, but have a chance of evolving a weapon into its ultimate form, provided other prerequisite steps are met along the way. Most weapons can evolve if they are paired with a corresponding tool, and in one case if 2 specific weapons are paired together, and then yet another more recent update 2 weapons and an additional tool on top of that. Also, it's important to note that the weapon needs to be at max level in order to actually evolve, but the level of the tool that goes with it is irrelevant provided that you have it on hand. I don't want to spoil these, as there is a lot to unlock, but since the whip is the first weapon in the game, I'll use it as an example so you'll understand this process a little better. If you max out the whip to its final level and also have the hollow heart, which ups your maximum HP passively, the whip can then evolve into the Bloody Tear, a wonderful double pun and a weapon great for its damage output and vertical crowd control. However, it's important to remember that most tool effects influence almost all weapons all the time, even those in an evolved state. Let me try to give an example to make this make a little bit more sense. So you already have your Bloody Tear, then you pick up, say, the Duplicator. Well, you would see additional slashes from the whip weapon, and that would also pass on to additional weapons you picked up, like, say, the Magic Rod. The system sets up intuitive ways to create different kinds of weapon and tool loadouts. For example, I once went with a Death from Above build, focusing heavily on the Holy Water and Lightning Ring weapons, trying to use indirect attacks for the better part of my run. And there's plenty of other different types of loadouts that you could try as well. And on top of that, what happens between runs matters too. In addition to your experience points, which you'll lose between runs upon dying, there's also gold which will stay with you in a cumulative bank. You can then spend this gold to purchase additional characters when the criteria for unlocking them has been met, and passive power-ups. One of the things I greatly applaud the dev for is that these power-ups can be refunded completely and then redistributed at any time, allowing for different strategies, challenge runs, and even the optional curse modifier, which makes enemies more powerful and more numerous. Once you've unlocked everything there is, ignoring future updates for the sake of this aside, you still have the option to refund your power-ups and try different options at your leisure. This is, in part, because levels have a soft time limit, mostly being 30 minutes each, though one has a 15-minute kill switch. At the cutoff, you are rushed by a super boss monster that, at present, can only be killed by using exploits and bugs present in the game, and more spawn each subsequent minute until you're finally overtaken. So any run where you hit that 30-minute limit is generally considered a success. And since your loadout is somewhat randomized every time you play, and the characters can influence stats as well, each run can feel very different from the last depending on how you play. Oh yeah, those RPG stats. I got so caught up in the weapons that I completely forgot to even mention this. Almost all weapons are influenced by stats such as amount, or the ability to use more of a given weapon at a time, its area or size, might, raw damage, and much, much more. And since there are passive tools corresponding to each of these stats, and power-ups as well, and more, To say that things can get rapidly more chaotic is grossly underselling it. If you can see what you're doing by the 25-minute mark, you're probably playing the game wrong. In case it wasn't already pretty obvious, I love Vampire Survivors, and I don't understand why you're still listening to me babble instead of playing it right now. Unless you are playing it right now and also listening to me at the same time. I guess that's an economical use of your time at least. Anyway, the game is amazing and still being worked on, with a roadmap recently being shared with players on its Steam page. Oh, and did I mention, the game is literally just $3 USD. You don't get more reasonable than that for a game that can easily become an addiction. As for my wish list for hypothetical future updates, those would basically be a limitless mode for starters. Just ramp up the difficulty till the player dies instead of using a super boss to do the job. I feel that'd be more satisfying overall. And possibly a co-op multiplayer mode? This may not be feasible or realistic due to, melting end-user graphics cards, even if both players are locked to the same camera, but a SNEC can dream, right? Simple gameplay experiences like this cry out for that co-op play. And beyond that, just more. More weapons, more characters, more goofy, fun stuff like that. That's really all I want anyway, and it seems we're on the way to getting precisely that. And for now, that's the final word on today's bit of indie excellence. This has been the Survivor SNEC, bringing to you another amazing indie title for your consideration. If you liked today's episode, hit the like button. Have you already played the game? Are you pro alpha dog like myself and have 100% of the achievements unlocked, as of this writing? Leave a comment down below telling me so. I'd like to see who has enjoyed this game as much as I have. And for more content like this, each week tap the subscribe button so you'll never miss a one. There's more IndieX, obscure games, SNEC Tech, and the new home of the Tomodachi Bros podcast, all right here on Channel SNEC. You never know what'll come next, but I assure you, I will see you there.